Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on cyber liability insurance presented by Spin Technology. We're glad to have you here with us. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. Please note that this webinar will be recorded and made available to all attendees. If you do have any questions during the event, you may submit it in the chat section in your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll follow up with you after the presentation. Similar to a lot of you out there, we are working from home, so if we do experience any technical difficulties, we'll do our best to resolve them as quick as possible. Now, please let me introduce our host for today, Darren Kimura. Darren is the Executive Chairman for Spin Technology. I'll now hand it off to Darren. Darren, take it away.
Hi, Jeremy. Thank you for that introduction. And hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. Today, we're here to talk about cyber liability insurance. But before we get into our topic, I'd like to talk a little bit about Spin Technology. So Spin Technology, we were founded in 2016. We're based in Palo Alto, California. We have 55 employees around the world developing our technology, our code, and selling our software. And our vision is to protect the world's data in the new cloud era. And that means protecting your data as it resides in the cloud, as it's processed in the cloud. Across our platform, we have 1.5 million users, and that large user base gives us the opportunity to engage with hundreds of businesses every single week. And because of that, we get a lot of perspectives. We get a lot of questions about how companies should go about protecting their environments, and we try to capture those best practices and share them with you here in these webinars. Now, before we get into the topic, I'd like to talk about SpinOne, our core technology. SpinOne sits on top of G Suite or Office 365 as an add-on. And what we provide are really three key things. We provide ransomware protection, cybersecurity protection, protecting your cloud data against ransomware, against brute force attacks, and we help you to recover any files, for example, that were encrypted as it resides to files in the cloud. We provide full data backup and recovery at a 99% accuracy level. And we also do application and extension auditing, which means that we can actually take a look at the applications that connect into your environment, review those applications for risk, let you know what the risks are, and our policy management allows you to create policies which will allow the connection or deny connections of these applications into your environment. That allows you to ensure that your environment continues to be safe. Now, SpinOne does a lot. As I mentioned, everything that we do is in the cloud, but from a IT perspective and your organizations, you go far beyond the cloud, and we completely understand that, which is why we decided to bring the cyber liability insurance product into our technology suite and bring our guest speaker here today to speak specifically about it. So what I'd like to do is introduce you to Tyron Standing, who is the co-founder at Parasure, which is a cyber liability insurance plus security technology company. Prior to founding Parasure, Tyron was the chief data officer at CPA Global and the president at Innography. And before that, he was the worldwide industry solutions manager at IBM. Tyron, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Darren. Appreciate being here. Just for other context, Parasure itself was born out of the pains that I'm sure many of you feel. We actually had a vulnerability we detected, and I spent close to a year trying to find cyber insurance. Quickly came to the determination that a lot of companies are not suited to be distributed cyber insurance through normal means. And so we've created a company somewhat like LifeLock to be able to help distribute cyber insurance to those who really need it the most. So definitely a problem that was close to my heart, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you to understand a little bit more about cyber liability insurance.
Perfect. And your cyber liability product is actually integrated with SpinOne. So as it relates to our customers, when they buy SpinOne, they have the option to also buy the extended cyber liability insurance, which protects them. SpinOne protects them in the cloud, but the CLI product also protects them across their entire IT environment, right? So for example, ransomware attacks, as it may impact them in their local environment, SpinOne may not be able to cover that, but they can look to CLI to help them out there.
Absolutely. There's many scenarios that the CLI can be able to help complement and augment your solution.
One thing that I always think about from a CLI perspective is coming from the route switch world. You know, CLI stands for command line interface, but in this case, obviously, we're using the acronym to represent cyber liability insurance. So what exactly is cyber liability insurance?
Sure. Cyber liability insurance is much like any other insurance. If you have auto insurance, you get in an accident, it helps you to be able to protect your liability, help you recover, and deal with the event. Cyber liability is anything from a ransomware event to any kind of data breach for your customers, regulatory compliance. So there's a number of different scenarios that can trigger it. But at the end of this, cyber liability insurance really helps you protect against your risks, deal with regulatory compliance, and then help mitigate a lot of the problems with that. So it comes not only with the payment of the insurance, but also services that are really important to be able to help you mitigate and manage that. So the integrated solution with Spin, for example, is a $100,000 policy, zero deductible, but it also comes with 24/7 breach hotlines so that if you have an event, you can call up, you have a team of experts, attorneys specifically, to help you walk through that, and then they can deploy solutions like forensics or other things that can be able to help you solve that. So in short, cyber liability insurance is a way to help you doing your business online and protect you from all the event risks that you face.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, organic companies these days have been changing in the way that they work and generally operate from kind of an on-prem in the office environment now to more of one which allows for work from home, distributed work environments. So that means that more of the intellectual property, the knowledge is actually sitting in digital format now. So CLI can help you kind of protect for against the risks that's trying to go and act, be a bad actor against that information. So I guess the question that I thought of next was, as a business operator, I have typically general liability insurance. Why do I need CLI on top of that?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, right now we're working in an interesting environment as people move more. We're moving more into the home anyway, or remote working. In fact, with COVID-19 and all the things that are happening, 80% of executives think that they're more exposed by having companies or employees work from home. Think that there's a lot more exposure that they have. The amount of dark web and breach attempts and phishing attacks is way up. And so the problem is, even if you have those liability or general insurance programs, it doesn't cover for a lot of cyber events. So you have things like ransomware attacks. That's not really covered from that. Being able to negotiate the ransom, pay the ransom, being able to deal with the forensics to figure out how they came in and penetrated the environment, dealing with notification and regulatory compliance laws. You might not realize it as a company, but you're actually exposed to a lot of different potential regulations. So there's 9 federal that really impact companies, a lot of HIPAA, PCI, ones that you probably know about. A lot that I find people don't know about is there's over, I believe, 20 some odd state laws that are introducing different privacy laws, and each state has its own privacy requirements. And all those require you to be compliant and liable for breach of your customer data. So whether it's your employees or your customer information, any of those breaches, not only is it going to take you time and money to be able to deal with it, but actually increases your exposure to your customers and to regulators. Take a quick example, ransomware. Let's say that someone breaks in and demands $10,000. Well, there's a lot of hidden costs that you're not thinking about too, because now you have to pay legal fees to figure out the regulatory requirements. Am I liable in this state? Then I have forensics. How did it come in? Because I could patch it or pay the ransom, but that doesn't mean they're not going to come back again. So being able to figure out the root cause of that, and then let's say that you destroy the data, that actually requires you to notify the customer that their data was compromised. Even though you recovered the data, it still could require it. So there's a lot of things that you're probably not thinking about, and those aren't covered by other insurance policies. In fact, it's called silent cyber. A lot of people don't realize that they're not covered under their other protection. So in short, no solution is 100% out there, but the CLI helps you with a lot of blind spots and things that you probably don't realize you have.
Mm-hmm. So how does it work? I've got cyber liability insurance in place. I have a breach, or I have an exposure now. How does all this come together?
Sure. So the great thing is that we've worked obviously with Spin to be able to make it as seamless as possible. And I can honestly say this is as the easiest possible experience you can have for insurance. First of all, once you sign up through Spin, it would be automatically provisioned. As long as you're a US-based company and don't have any PCI breaches in the past, or a tier one credit card processor, which is 99.9% of companies out there don't fit that, you are able to have the insurance, and then it gets deployed automatically. We do dark web monitoring to be able to alert you to exposures of your passwords and credentials. But more importantly, when a breach actually happens, you have an 800 number. So this is staffed by a law firm attorneys that are specifically educated in breach response. And what they do is walk you through the entire experience of how to respond, which services are necessary, and then deploying those services. So a lot of premium brand names that like CrowdStrike or others to be able to help you respond to these services. So it's easy to deploy. There's no real paperwork or anything. Then we're able to deploy a hotline that's kind of like a concierge or white glove experience to walk you through when you have a breach, and then actually being able to pay for the services that are covered under the policy with top near brand names. And so allows you kind of a breach response in a box, if you will.
Yeah, it makes it easy, right? I think that's the point. A lot of times we find IT managers are super busy in their day job. When they have a breach, now they also have to become, forensics investigator. They have to become, auditor. They have to go in and gather data and, support to their executive management how it happened, why it happened, and how it's not going to happen again. That's not something most organizations can handle, because they have already got other projects out there. And having the CLI team behind them to be able to call, get advice, recommendations, even resources, service providers, for example, that can actually step in and do some of that work for them and paid for by the CLI policy, it really goes a long way. It gives them a peace of mind that they may not otherwise have.
I can definitely say that many of our customers have experienced a breach and could not have afforded that, or especially with budgetary concerns, they don't have the staff or the money to be able to deal with it. And it's super economical for them to be able to solve something that could be one of the worst experiences in their life.
Yeah, I think that directly flows right into the next question I was wondering about. So let's say that we have a customer now who has the policy, has a breach, needs to kind of take it to the next step. Can you give us some examples of how this has helped other companies in the past kind of get back on their feet?
Absolutely. So one, ransomware is really high in demand, or a high activity right now. It's been up 100% over the last year on claims. A lot of people think about, the ransom itself, but there's a lot of the other things. So for example, we had a dentist who had a compromise and infected his clients. And so he had to be able to pay $10,000 for the ransom. There was a team of negotiators that actually were able to negotiate the ransom down. And be able to help negotiate that in the payment, put it into Bitcoin, et cetera. Then being able to have the about $30,000 of legal services. They had about $50,000 of forensics. Then they had notification because some of the destruction of the data that had occurred. So they had state and regulatory compliance things. That dentist definitely didn't have the IT staff and didn't have the budget to be able to afford it. Another quick one that I'm sure everyone's experienced or heard about is social engineering. People break into your email, impersonate one of your vendors, change the wiring information. Oops, I accidentally wired out some money. We actually can help reimburse that money if it's because of a social engineering event. So we've had a number of people who've had that happen. Business email compromise. Hey, I'm the CEO. Can you send me all the W-2 information for your employees? All of a sudden, it seems really innocuous, but now I've given Social Security, all the bank information for a number of my employees, and now I have liability as an employer because I've sent out that sensitive information. So being able to deal with regulatory compliance, identity theft management, and monitoring and prevention and recovery of that is really a big piece. Another big dollar item is sometimes people will break in and steal your bank credentials. It's called e-theft, and being able to wire out money by breaking into your account and then sending it somewhere else. And we can reimburse up to $100,000 for that. So these are real dollars that I'm sure no one has money just lying around that they don't have to answer to. So having the people and the dollars available to them, I can definitely say have saved a number of our clients from some of these events.
Especially now with COVID, because what we're hearing universally is that revenues have been impacted. IT budgets are going down, not up. So getting a breach, getting impacted, and now having to go in and find money that may not be available, that's a nightmare situation for some of these organizations. So having a policy like this behind them gives them, again, that little peace of mind, which is so helpful, so comforting. So that's good. So what criteria should one consider when evaluating a CLI policy? What should a business operator think about when they're trying to acquire a CLI policy?
Well, the first thing that you really have to think about is, what is your exposure? One is, how many employees do you have? So let's say you're a company that has 200 employees. Well, each of them is a potential exposure point. Either they're going to leak your customers' information, or you're leaking information about the employees. One of the biggest risks that companies say is they're worried about exposing or breaching customer data. And so when that happens, you trigger regulatory compliance concerns and a lot of issues there. How many states do you operate in? Because, as I mentioned, it's a hodgepodge of different compliance rules. So you have to think about it from a holistic perspective. Do you have a breach response plan in place? So a lot of these things that can be resolved by having this policy. And what's your budget? I mean, you can go out and spend $100,000 easily on a cyber liability policy, but unless you're just flush with cash, you need to be economical and trying to figure out what is the most coverage you can have for the least amount of money. And the other thing is, a lot of policies will require to exclude things like, do you have firewalls and do you have specific technologies in place, which requires a massive cultural and technological change. And you don't have the time and effort to be able to do that kind of cultural change inside your company. So those are largely the things you think about. Another couple stats to think about are the average breach for a small and medium-sized business is about $200,000 of expenses that go into it. We have options that, $100,000 to $1 million that go into it, but by and large, companies that range small and medium-sized enterprises, that's what they need to think about. Also, one factor is some people already have cyber insurance, but most people have high deductibles. So the other cool thing is that we can actually fit in and take their deductible down to zero. So when you think about it, the average company is going to have about 60 to 80% chance of breach within the next 5 to 10 years. The cost of that's going to be at least $200,000 on average. So depending on what you're willing to tolerate and your exposure there, something as economical as what we're talking about with SPIN and CLI allows you to do something extremely economical, but being able to mitigate a lot of the risk on it. Some of the policies will cover business interruption, which will pay for lost revenue, but when you do that, that's extremely expensive. So again, from a cost-benefit analysis, really looking for, how can I get a breach response plan, the services, which is absolutely key, in being able to pay for those services, which will cover 90-95% of the things that I need to deal with. And those are pretty much the highlights that I recommend to people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And bundled with SPIN, we're on a subscription basis, so that allows them to consume the insurance in a way that may be more, frankly, easier for them to than otherwise. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And actually, that goes directly to my next question. If you're a business operator, if you're an IT manager, where can they go about acquiring CLI from?
Great. Well, you can buy cyber insurance from any of your insurance brokers or agents. As I mentioned at the beginning, I spent nearly a year trying to go through that, and countless thousands of hours and dollars trying to figure that out. The great thing is, through SPIN, you can actually have this as part of your integrated solution. And it's integrated in the best part that you're able to have it instant on. There's zero paperwork. You're able to have it put in really quickly. The pricing is on a per user basis, so it actually makes it very economical, and it's extremely unique for companies to be able to put that together. It's an A+ rated carrier, and it's a top 5 cyber insurance company. But the short answer is, you don't have to look very far or very hard. You're able to get this from SPIN as part of your subscription, and it's extremely simple, and it's transparent to you, so that you don't have to take any of the effort and work into it, and you get a lot of the benefits.
Perfect. I mean, I think that covers all the bases. I think if there's any more information that people need, by all means, please visit us at our website at spin.ai. If you have questions, email us at info@spin.ai, and we'll be more than happy to get back to you and get one of our insurance experts on the cause, as well as one of our technical experts to talk about Spin One. Tyron, this has been great, super helpful. Any final thoughts on your end that you'd like to share?
No, I really appreciate it. It's been great working with Spin. They've awesome company, and if you're thinking about it on the borderline, I absolutely recommend it. Just because 80% of companies don't have cyber insurance, but it's extremely likely to have it, and this is one of the most cost-effective solutions. It is the most cost-effective solution that you can have out there.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, your expertise, and everyone who tuned in. Thank you for joining us in this webinar. Jeremy, back to you.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks, Tyron. For more information, you may visit our website at www.spin.ai. That concludes our presentation, and we'll now end the session. Thank you.